Okay, welcome back. So this will be the third of 4 videos in this Microsoft Excel crash course. Now, in the second video, we just got done talking about the fill function. And we did something with the fill function, and that brought up an error for us, or at least it didn't do what we thought it would do. Because Excel uses something it calls referencing. And that's not spelled. Referencing. Okay, that looks better. So Excel uses something called referencing when it builds formulas. So just quick review, what we did last time is we talked about the fill function, where we said in this cell, we're going to take this value to the left multiplied by this I1 up here. Hit enter, and then we fill that down. And our goal here was to multiply every one of these values in column E to this value up here in I1. And notice what it did. If I double click on one of these, notice what the fill function did. When it got the one to the left, that's correct. And it multiplied by a value 2 up, 3 to the right. And again, computers are dumb. They're going to do exactly what you tell them to do, and not a whole lot more, at least for the time being. What it's doing in this case, what Excel's doing in this case, is it's using a type of referencing called relative referencing. So relative reference. Relative reference just uses the cell. What we want in this particular case is what we call an absolute reference. To change the reference from anything other than relative, we're going to incorporate some dollar signs. There's a couple ways we can do that. So an absolute reference has 2 dollar signs, one on the row, one on the column. So what the heck does that mean? Well, so what we told Excel to do is to use relative references. This E3, this is one cell to the left relative your location. Right now, this I1 is 2 cells up, 3 rows, 3 columns to the right relative current location. So if you look at these other formulas, both of these are relative references. This E8 is 1 cell left relative current location. This I6 is 2 rows up, 3 columns right relative current location. If that's not what I want, I've got to tell the computer something different. So if you double click in this formula here, you can rebuild it if you like, or we can just modify it, or you can click up here in the formula bar to open it up and modify it. If I put my cursor right here on the I1, this is the one I want to change. The E3, I want that to be relative, but the I1, I want to not be relative. I want an absolute here. If you'll push the F4 key on your keyboard, notice what it does. It puts a dollar sign on the I and a dollar sign on the 1. That tells Excel, use column I, row 1, every single time for this value. Now, if I hit enter, and it doesn't look like it did anything, right? Well, yeah, because I didn't tell it to also change these cells. I just said change this cell. To change these other cells, I need to fill, and you can just fill over whatever's there. You could highlight it and delete it, or we can just fill over what's there. And notice what happens. Every one of these cells now, you double click and open them up. The first one is a relative reference, no dollar signs. The second one is an absolute reference. Every single time, go to column I, row 1 for that value. The intersection of a column and a row is a cell, so every single time, go to cell I1 for the second value. Multiply whatever's to the left by I1. And then we can change this. So now I've set kind of an input value. It doesn't have to be 5, it could be 4. And you hit 4 and enter, and notice every single cell that references I1 gets updated. Now, that's all for my intro to engineering students. That's all I'm going to ask them to do in this particular assignment is some relative and some absolute references. But I do like to talk about mixed references. And so a mixed reference has either a $sign on the column or the row. So in this case, this would be the row, or I could have a $sign on the column and not the row. So it's one or the other, but not both. Both is what we call absolute. Mixed is one or the other. Right, and the best way I know one of the best applications I know off the top of my head for a mixed reference is a multiplication table. Now, I'm going to leave this stuff here. I want to come back to this, but I do want to show you. So in older versions of Excel, if you look down here at the bottom of the spreadsheet, you'd have sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3. New versions of Excel, they just give you one sheet, but you can add more. So I'm going to hit new sheet down here. That gives me sheet 2. And if you don't like the name sheet 2, you could right click on it and you can rename, you can change it, you can delete it. I'm just going to leave it sheet 2 for right now. I'm going to zoom in so we can see in case you're watching this on your phone or something. So I zoom in a little ways, and if I build a multiplication table, here's what I'm going to do. We're going to go 1 through 10, and here in column A, the way I build it is I'm going to go in column A, row 3. I'm going to start with 1. I'm going to go 1, enter, 2, enter, 3, enter. I'm going to highlight those. I'm going to fill that down to 10. So I'm going to fill these down. Now, I didn't mention in the last video, fill function. You can fill left, right, up, down, any direction. In this case, I'm going to fill to the right. So I'm going to go 1 tab, 2 tab, 3 tab. And then I'm going to fill that to the right. See what it's doing there. So again, you can fill up, down, left, right, any direction you want. One group at a time. Okay. So again, we're going to build a multiplication table using mixed references. Now I like to do it wrong first, do it the wrong way first, so we can talk about what it's doing. So what I would like to do in this multiplication table is I want to take, in this particular cell, I want to take this value, this 1, and multiply it by this 1 up here. I'm going to hit enter. Again, this is the wrong way to do it, but let's fill it, and let's look and see what that looks like. So I fill this down. I'm getting some weird looking stuff there, not what I think I'm supposed to get. If I fill that to the right, that does not at all look like what I had in mind, right? If I click in this cell, let me zoom back just a little bit so we can see. If I click in this cell right here, what I wanted was I wanted to multiply the 4 by the 5 in this particular cell, but see what it did, because I gave it relative references. Up here, I hit enter there. So I get it done with that for you. Let's look at this formula. Notice what I did. Again, computers are dumb. They're going to do what you tell them to and not a whole lot more. I told it, take the value 2 cells to the left and multiply it by the value 2 cells up. And that's what it did everywhere. Right? That's not what we wanted. What we want, when you're using a mixed reference, you really kind of have to think about what is it that you want. In this case, what I really want is I want the value out of column A. I want the value out of column A and multiply it by the value up here in row 1. So that's where I've got to put my $signs. So you can do it 2 ways. We mentioned use the F4 key. If I put my cursor there on the A3 and I push the F4 key, it gives me both $signs. That's not what I want in this case. If I keep pushing F4, notice what it does. It rotates through all the possible combinations of where to put the $sign. If I just want column A, that's what I want in this first value. I just want a value from column A. So I'm going to put a $sign just on column A. Leave the row, leave the 3 alone because I need the row to move up and down. And if I go to the other value in this equation here, put my cursor in that. Again, you can push the F4 key, or you can manually put a $sign. In this case, I want the value out of row 1. I want to leave the column alone. The C is okay because I want the column to change as we drag this across. So let me try that. I'm going to hit enter. Finish that formula, and I need to refill it, so I'm going to fill it down. And I'm going to fill that to the right. I'm going to go one more there, looks like. And notice now, if I double click on any one of these values, every single time it's coming to column A, row 1, for that value. So we built a simple multiplication table. Now, my hope is I've opened up all kinds of possibilities so far, and we've got one more thing we want to talk about here in a second. But in this video, again, we've talked about referencing. Right? That's putting a $sign somewhere, either row or column or both in the case of an absolute. And again, the F4 key will give you those $signs. All right, so we'll look at, in the next video, we'll look at functions.